Well, for many of us, that was a rubbish week of fantasy football to get through. There were laid outs, there were subs, there were underperforming players, and then there were guys that we just had enough of. We shipped them out. Yeah, Farrell and Sanders owners know who I'm talking about. And all of a sudden, the outs turn into absolute studs. Welcome to the world of trading players in AFL Fantasy and SuperCoach. But as we head to another round and a critical point in the season, there is a ton of stuff we have got to navigate our way through. And here at the Coaches Panel on this week's strategy session, we're going to help you with exactly that. We want to talk trade priorities, the downgrade dilemmas that many of you are navigating through this week. Bench hygiene has never been more critical, and I think it's been put on the back burner. So we want to bring that back into the forefront. And then, of course, maybe you've started slow, or maybe you've had a hot start. No matter where your season is, we've got some advice to help navigate you through this portion of the season. We're going to talk all that and more on this week's strategy session. Hey, it's MJ from the Coaches Panel. I do hope your first 6 weeks of the year have been positive for you. If not, we got you, baby. We're going to navigate you through. We're going to get you back on track. Whether it's a league or a ranking focus, we are here to help. Joining me on this week's edition of the strategy session is a man that's not only a part of the Coaches Panel, but he is also the host of the Finders Keepers podcast. It's a spin-off of the Coaches Panel, but it is a weekly content piece during the season that helps you uniquely focused on your keeper and dynasty leagues. Jordox, good to have you back on the strategy session, and some very fine work you're doing on Finders Keepers this season for us, mate.
Thank you, MJ. Yeah, great to be on with you, mate. It's been a while, I reckon, since I've been on a strategy one with you, and I'm certainly in that camp of someone that's had a bit of a slower start this year in the classic formats, and perhaps, yeah, my energy and my mind has just been too much in the draft and the keeper game, but hopefully I can help out with some thoughts on the state of things at the moment, because like you said, the weekend just gone through so many curveballs, whether it be subs or, like you said, popular trade outs that just went bang on the way out. So lots to discuss, mate, and it's good to be on again.
I think that's the beauty, like what SuperCoach and Dream Team have introduced for us. The community kind of went into meltdown on social media with rolling lockouts and subs and challenges over the weekend. I think, hats off to the guys at SuperCoach and Dream Team for what they've done. I love the inclusion of Flex. I was quite a fan of it when I heard about it in December anyway, but really there's 3 things it does brilliantly for us when we get those Luke Trainer-esque or Tom Gross style subs and we didn't get the opportunity to get around to correct it for one reason or another. It just dilutes that out of what normally could have absolutely ruined your weekend. So I love that in best 22, you've got 23 on field and the crap score falls off. I love that. I love that for someone that's either on the more casual nature or just can't or don't want to be glued to a device over a weekend. Maybe it's because of work's going on. Maybe you just want to give your weekend to family, playing sport, whatever your reason. You don't need to justify it. But I love that you get protected and not punished with that. And then I also think for the hardcore nut that plays, it actually has this unique strategic imperative to you, because not only are you trying to now find 23 premiums on field, not just 22, but who you put on, which rookie you activate, how you make certain trade cadence moves. It's a new strategy dynamic. So it's not just bailing out the casual or bailing out the bad coach, but actually it's this new tactical part of the game that if you can unlock it well and early. So I love Flex. I think it's a game changer. I'd love AFL Fantasy to put the utility on field and do the exact same thing. I think there's nothing wrong with formats going, you know what? That's a great idea. I'm going to bring that into our game too. I know AFL Fantasy outside of Keeper and Dynasty leagues is your number one priority in a bunch of different spaces, but what would you hear if AFL Fantasy came back to us next year and went, you know what? Utility on field, crap score drops off. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I'd welcome anything that brings a little bit of a change to what we're seeing. I think so many of the issues, though, and a lot of the discussions we'll call on X over the weekend, I mean, they're largely for me, bypassing the main issue, which is the sub rule itself. If we were in a world where there was no sub rule, or the sub was announced on a Thursday night, something like that, I think so many of these issues that people have would actually go. And, you know, there was a time late last year, MJ, I thought the sub rule was going, but, you know, it's here for the time being. Now, with the flex, I mean, the flex has been interesting in that it's in its infancy. We're 6 weeks in to seeing what it looks like. So I don't think, you know, the real hardcore players have just quite worked out the best way to use the flex spot. I don't think any of us know, and probably won't maybe until seasons 2 or 3 of having it. So if AF have a look at it maybe for another year and then bring it in, I think it could be a goer. But end of the day, mate, it doesn't matter what changes are made. You can't please everyone. And once again, let's all unite and just look at the one common enemy here, which is the AFL and the sub rule. That's the problem here.
Why not? Hey, let's move then back into probably the dilemmas that coaches are facing this week across the formats. Again, the strategy session helps you with your AFL Fantasy, your SuperCoach, and your Dream Team sides. The common tension coaches are having right now is these two competing war of worlds. And on one hand, you have got these guys that have got premium pedigree about them that are so cherry ripe for the picking that it's ridiculous. Players such as a Christian Petrarca with mid-forward status and two great matchups after two pretty good scores that have happened in the last fortnight, leading off on Thursday night against the Tigers. Everything is screaming, get track, get track. He'd probably be my number one trade target across the formats if I was advocating for one, and it would absolutely be him. You could probably put a Tristan Cherry in the same mix of he's basically ripe for the picking. In SuperCoach and Dream Team, flex means you can have 3 rucks, whereas for AFL Fantasy, it's like, oh, TDK slowed. I could probably do a sideways trade and get someone who I think is probably 10 to 15 points better off if the divergence continues on towards Cherry of last year and TDK of current last month. So you've got these guys that are staring us down the barrel, and there's one at least in every line where you're like, pick me, pick me, pick me. I'm ripe for the picking. But then when you look at your unique team, which we all have unique versions of it now, is that might not be the pressing issue at the moment. Those that ran 3 defenders on field last week, not by necessity, but by design, might be going, I don't want to bench Davidson. I don't want to bench Marich. I don't want to bench Lindsay and get Petrarca because I'm still not fixing the biggest perceived issue in my side right now, which is getting rooks off the field. So how do you go about what are the tiebreakers for you? What are the processes that you work through systematically to go, yes, they are a good pick, but my team needs this, versus I need to get this anyway because it's undeniable value and I'll figure out certain trade elements or unique team elements. What are kind of the things you're looking at to navigate through this space?
I think the way I look at it, you know, doesn't always translate into what I do because I can change my mind. Right, you know what it's like. You have a thought all week and then you change your mind. And why did I do that? But speaking generally, I think we've kind of forgotten one of the age-old rules for fantasy, which I think stands the test of time and has been a rule that we've had since I started playing many, many, many moons ago. Get your kids off the field as the year progresses. And I was just as guilty as anyone as last week, getting a little bit, I reckon, cute, thinking, oh, look at all these kids in the back line. Let's move things around so I can play 3 kids on the field in the back line. I mean, if we rewind 6 weeks, MJ, we could barely find a kid that we were happy at D6. And now we're looking at putting 3 on field. And there's reasons for it, and I get all that. And like I said, I'm guilty of it myself. But the one thing that kept going through my mind across the Easter weekend was get the kids off the field, man. Just for every time you've got a Riley Bice that goes 125 and blows our mind, there's an inexplicable sub decision, and trainer is now scoring you 2. So the value guys, I don't know, they're juicy and they're an important part of the game. You've got to get a certain amount of guys at the right price to be competing with the best. But I think in terms of priorities at this stage of the year, I think it's getting kids off field, and that might mean missing out on Petrarca this week. But if he's going to be as good as we think he is, his price will be low enough for long enough. And for every Petrarca you miss, there's another value guy around the corner. I just think right now, get as many of those kids off the field, and that's probably where I land. In saying that, MJ, there's a high chance at the end of this week I'll just say, no, those kids can stay because I'm jumping on Petrarca.
I think that's the beauty of fantasy football, right? Is two different things can be true at the same time. But what I would say to it, in that, if that's the competing war of worlds you're looking at of, they're great value, but my team probably needs this. What I would probably say to you is, don't let last week's disasters or last week's heroics be the determining factor of what you do this week. Because again, you are probably watching this, and if you are, subscribe to us on YouTube, or listening to this, make sure you give us a 5-star rating if you are, and going, you know what, 3 rooks on field feels viable because the matchup for trainer was right. Nobody saw the sub. That's bad luck. That's not bad coaching. That's bad luck. The fixture for Pryor and for Reed looked great, and for Pryor it was fine. For Reed it just wasn't. Bice, I think, is an entirely different anomaly all on his own. He can be at D5, probably ideally D6 over the next fortnight till his bye. Like, he's like Levi Ashcroft. It's like, just leave it there and just go about the rest of my business and upgrade elsewhere. But just because a Reed, for example, or a trainer with a sub, who it's not going to be this week because they're Thursday night, you'll get good visibility and it won't be a problem. And they've already said he's playing a full game. Is you got the opportunity to go, if I was okay with it last week, does the matchup determine it or not? It was always had an element of risk, but don't just go, it crapped itself last week, it's going to do it again the next week. That's like going, player X absolutely popped a massive score, therefore this next week they will pop a massive score. You just can't do it that way. There are variable reasons for why it is. So I would actually, the first bit of advice around that I'd give you is, just because something happened last week doesn't mean it's going to happen again next week. We put Reed on field 2 weeks ago and he was a 90 guy. The following week he's a 30 guy. And there are always parallels and reasons and layers to it for sure. But for me, it's never just about don't do that. But the biggest bit of advice on top of that I'd share with you is, every trade you make this week should actually be thinking about your team's health the following week. So the moves you make now, don't just get so narrow-minded. I have to get Nick Martin. I have to get Petrarca. I have to get this rook on field. And what you end up doing is only thinking about fixing your team now. What you should be doing is, at the very least, if I make this move, what does it do to my team next week? If I get Petrarca in this week, do I set myself up in a position where I can then make the rookie moves I want next week? Is that player available at the right price for me next week? Because even if you're running the 3 defender rooks on field for another week, if it pushes a Lindsay or a Davidson off field, just for the sake of names, not saying you should move those guys off, but just for the sake of names, but all of a sudden, the following week, Stone might be ready to go, and you could go up and get that premium defender that you want. Zorko might have come at the price point that you're happy to buy. Sheasel might have landed at the price point you're happy to buy. You might finally have built up that cash because now you've also got a Wix, you've also got a Marich, you've also got a whomever, that these 2 things can now enable you to get that premium defender you want, not get you stuck with this halfway house where you're meddling in the Harry Himmelbergs of options going, it's the best that I can afford, but I have to get the rook off the ground. You just can't play fantasy like that. It's got to be what is right for your team, but not what's right for your team only this week. Is what is right for my team that I'm building for future weeks. Because if you're only thinking about this week, you should be playing daily fantasy. That's how you should be. You are looking to build your team to improve in value, improve in performances. And you should be thinking about your team need. And the team need might be, I have to get the value of Petrarca this week. I have to get off this player this week. I have to fix defender 6 this week. And both of them can be true for different coaches, and you can do it as long as you're not just thinking about my team this week, stuff that I've got to fix it. It's got to be about the future weeks, not just this one week.
Yeah, that's strong advice. And, I think the one thing I take out of that is about the being reactive and thinking, because the 3 defenders last week didn't work, I must change it. But I guess it's a unique one because I feel like we were all reacting to the week before where they all performed. Like, they're too good for my bench. Get them on field. Oh, no, they sucked. Get them off my field. And that's why I come back to that old school, long-standing mindset that as you go, get your kids off the field. Because, like you said, no one could have predicted the trainer sub. Zach Reed looked for all money to be minimum 70, the way the Bombers possessing back there and the matchup, and then he drops a 30. But again, what should we really be surprised, MJ, by any of this? They are kids and rookies, and that is what happens in this game.
Key position players too.
And that's why. Well, Reed went into the ruck in the last quarter. I thought, he might get a few hit outs, but it didn't help him. That's great advice. I think there's no one answer. It's not black and white, and it's not just the old team dependent. It's not getting stuck on one or the other with your mindset. And I think you've put that forward really well.
Yeah, as long as you're forward thinking with the moves you make this week, then you can get a Petrarca. You can do the TDK to Cherry. You can get your Nick Martin. You can get that whoever it is, but just make sure it's not just remedying a 1 week fix. You're thinking about what your team is going to look like in a week, in 2 weeks, in 4 weeks. The moves you make now need to improve your team for the next few weeks, not just fix a pain point or a scab that's created for you over the last couple of days with some frustrating performances. And so to that, coaches are then going, well, I have a bunch of guys that are topped out or feel topped out in price. The trainer is absolutely sitting in that realm. And I'd happily move him on this week across formats. I'd happily move him on. There are some players that, depending on the way your team works with utility and AF and the flex in SuperCoach and Dream Team, he could almost move to anybody you want. Should you be able to then move a Stone, a Wicks, back into that spot, or an O'Sullivan, or you're going straight to another rookie in that spot or another defender in that spot. But we're looking at options to downgrade, and I don't think across the formats, most coaches are loving the downgrade option that they are looking to. So I'm talking under 300,000 in AFL Fantasy and under 200,000 in SuperCoach, let alone under 150,000. We're not looking at a ton of names going, I love that pick. Like we're talking like Tunstall in AF. We're hoping a Buslinger might appear. We're hoping Boxall might come back from the Saints. We're going, even a Carroll in AF. We're going, he's a little over 300,000. But I'll take it. And then in SuperCoach, it's like, well, it's Carroll. Hewitt popped a decent score, and I think he's a fine buy, by the way. But looking at these downgrade dilemmas going, where am I going to get this cash to upgrade? So I guess my question is, how are you looking at the cash generation that still needs to be very prevalent and important for us at the moment, while accessing these good value guys and not really loving the flushed option of cash cows we've got? How are you approaching the downgrade dilemma for coaches this week with not great job security or scoring potential of our cash cows at the moment?
Well, I think first and foremost, we've been absolutely blessed with the opening 6 weeks in terms of, real cash cows that have been scoring really well in that cash gen. So I don't know. I feel like as long as you got your ducks in a row in the first month, you've got enough of those guys that will be absolutely churning out the cash for you. But as you said, we're approaching the drop-off point, and now who's next? And I last week when Essendon and West Coast subs were announced, it was Gross and El Hawley, and I spent the next 40 minutes just, what can I do? Because I wanted one of them. And I was getting creative, MJ. I mean, I looked at Charlie Spargo, who was around 300K, and he ended up scoring 70, and I was like, I should have done that. In the end, I went with El Hawley, and they didn't turn out well for me. But to your question, you do have to get creative, and I don't know, this could be poor advice, but I will almost think it's okay if you swing for a kid to get the cash and it's not a slam dunk. Because, I mean, one of the big issues over the weekend was those who viced Dacos on Thursday night and then spent the whole weekend panicking that Boyd could be a late in. So the lack of red dots, it's a good spot. And, we'll talk about bench hygiene later, but it's a good spot to be in. But for me, it's almost like, well, if I do pick a kid a little bit I'm not in love with, but the price is there, he's guaranteed to play at least a couple of weeks. If he then turns into a dead rook, I'm not as scared of that as I usually would be. And then the other thing I'd say is we just need Bo Allen to play. That's all I'll say. Because once he's in, we've got one. And he's not far. He can't be far.
True.
And then
you'd hope so, but
yeah. And then you've got the other thing is, going above the 300K. How much are you prepared to pay for the cash generation with the job security versus 100K cheaper, quick cash, and maybe it's a dead rook? That's the balance we've got, and there's always plenty between 300 and 400. It's just whether you want to go that high.
It's why AFL fantasy coaches this week are looking at a James Tunstall as a $260,000 mid forward, scores 59 last week against the Pies. And I thought, at least for the first half, looked quite good.
Yeah.
I'd be really surprised if he's dropped off the back of that performance, given he was hardly the greatest concern for them. But it seems like Lohman's going to be back as early as this week, and there's every chance he's sub, even if he's named. Every chance he's given one colour vest, one way or another.
The perfect example, MJ, of what I'm talking about. A guy that works this week, but I think we all know he could be a dead rook in 2-3 weeks. But maybe there's your red dot loophole for the next month or so.
And that's like a challenging dilemma too, isn't it? Am I happy for the 100K it might free up for me, or the 200K it might free up for me now, that I could get into, but I can just get stuck. And now all of a sudden, while having a red dot can be helpful, having 3 or 4 of them, because you take multiple leaps, you're still looking at trying to find a way to get Camporelli out. All of a sudden you get a Hall and a Gross type that no longer feel like the stable selections they were a fortnight ago. You get an El Hawley who, no matter what he can do, just can't get out of the green vest from one way or another. And now all of a sudden, nothing stalls cash generation faster than a vest, and specifically a green one. Just ask Ted Closey owners. He looked great in that first game, but he was still with the green vest. And now all of a sudden, he's just not making you any money of any significance as you're going on. And so this is that challenging space where creativity does need to come, and a Bo Allen could come and save the day for us this week. We're recording this on a Tuesday evening, and he could fly in as the defender mid caped crusader, and all of a sudden we go, well, we should have confidence he's going to get a couple of weeks. But there's every chance that he gets Carroll, he gets Grost and he gets hauled, and all of a sudden after a week or two, it's like, you know what? nah, not quite. We need to do this. We need to work on that. So I think coaches should be looking, not just with their upgrades in the future ahead, but the downgrades too, is being conscious of what's the risk profile I'm coming into my team in here with the downgrade dilemma. It's why for me in SuperCoach, I actually think a great trade-in option for you this week has to be a Matty Flynn. Yes, it's basically a sideways move from a dollar's perspective of trainer into Flynn, but you go from a guy who's got to hit a 70s to even get close to making you money in SuperCoach to a guy that's got a break even of negative 70. That's 140 point turnaround right there in that one selection alone. And you're at least kicking that cash generation and moving that more and more forward again and again. And so to me, I'd look at what are the unique ways I could generate that cash and build my team value that's not getting crazy and weird and anything like that. But what are these format pending 2, 3, 4 week moves that I could make that could pay off rather than just a dart throw on a rookie that I hope pops? And we might get some. Allen, you've mentioned. I think Bustlinger sits in there. Boxall should get an opportunity based on how poor the Saints have been and what he's been doing at the lower levels. We've got guys like this doing that probably in most teams in the competition. But I think that dart throw on a rook, while it can be huge when it pays off, you can end up with 4 or 5 dead rooks. And all of a sudden, not only is your cash generation cooked, but now your upgrade cadence is ruined. And those that have built well, those that have, had a bit of luck on their side with the odd vest here or there, are now maybe behind you in team value and behind you in total points, but they can just accelerate. So I think we do need to show some wisdom with how we go around our downgrades this week, because at Tunstall, it might be the best you can do in AF. I think Carroll's fine in SuperCoach because he'll just track along for you. Carlton have done what they should have done over the last 2 weeks, which is win well. And yep, some players are out of their team at their moment for a bunch of different reasons, but if he's the way you get up to the premium you want and he's named, I'm okay with it. So, I don't like the Corey Durden move in SuperCoach. I'm not a real fan of that. But yeah, it's an interesting phase of the year, isn't it, Jordox? Because we're aggressively wanting to upgrade, but the rooks aren't there in a flush territory at time of recording in the way we'd hope.
No, that's right. And like I sort of said at the start, like if you're in that position where you're looking for a way to get your vice score loopholed onto the, probably can take that risk on a dart throw, like you said. But like you said, if you've got Campriali and a bunch of those other guys still sitting there, you can't add red dots if you've already got a few of them. So, yeah, it's a real tricky time, and we do want to upgrade. We desperately want to upgrade. But upgrading's just hard these days. Blame inflation, MJ. But the days of, one down, one up, it's really hard because the top guys, they're $1 million, and the kids are still starting right at the bottom. So, yeah, it's tricky, but it's a fun challenge that we have in the game, and it's a fun time of year because when you do get that upgrade and they perform, you feel great, don't you? Across the whole weekend.
100%. And that's, while we're talking about bench hygiene, and maybe we should park there for a moment before I get some last minute quick tips of you for coaches that have started strong and want to stay that way, and those that have started slow and need to get up to speed as fast as they can. Is one of the challenges with the upgrades is we look at the players that have got the most money on their head, and the only way we can get to the upgrade we want is we get off these top-end rookies that haven't quite topped out yet or are close to topping out, but they're probably our best rookies in terms of job security, free of vest, and scoring potential. And so we start looking at going, yep, Lindsay, you can go. Yep, Bice, you can go. Yep, Ashcroft, you can go to a lesser extent. I'll put Davidson's name in there, but he's in that mix of guys that you go, are they in that team's best 22? Yeah. Would you be absolutely gobsmacked if they got the vest, barring an injury? Yeah, you would. And have they got scoring potential and still money to make? Yeah. So that's where that downgrade dilemma intersects with our bench hygiene. Is you don't want to kill off future moves just for the week hit now of going, oh, the only way I can get into Dacos, the only way I can get into Petrarca, the only way I can get into Whitfield, the only way I can get into Martin is Ashcroft goes. All right, well, you've done your job. Off you go. That kind of move, I just couldn't advocate for that. And then now you're stuck with the Tunstals of the world. And again, that's not a go at James. It's just using him as the questionable rook of the week, right? And so now you're replacing, you might get an upgrade over here, but you're replacing it with a poor scoring rook and a poor cash generating rook that's just not able to replicate that. So I just think, with the downgrades you make, consider what your bench hygiene looks like as well, not just the upgrade that you get. Hey, you mentioned at the start of the podcast, Jordox, haven't had the strongest start to the year, and you're not alone in that. A lot of people have had slow starts to the year, and then a bunch of people have had really good starts to the year. Like, for example, if you look in Dream Team, I think 2 of the top 3 are coaches panel members in our founder. I make it sound like a cult every time I refer to him as one of our founders, but Rids is back leading Dream Team. Minnie's I think he's 3rd. I'm top 50 over there. And then, other members of the coaches panel are, top couple of 100 in SuperCoach and top 1,000 or 2 in AFL Fantasy. So, some of us had good starts to the year listening and watching. Some of us had bad starts to the year. What's your advice for a coach? Because my advice for whether you've started slow or been absolutely firing is actually the same. But for you, what would be the advice you're telling yourself right now? Because we all had years where the first 6 weeks you're like, oh, this has just not worked. That unique hasn't popped. That captain's guy, Sinclair, I'm looking at you, just didn't work out. I missed that rookie rule. We've all had those years where week upon week, things just don't all align for you well. So what's that advice you're telling yourself that would maybe encourage and support others that are just having a little bit of a slower start than they would have liked?
Well, I guess the first thing I'd say, MJ, is just give yourself a break. I mean, I've seen a lot of people really not happy with their starts, and I've got news for everyone. This is a bloody hard game. There is so much strategy, so much luck, so much that goes into it. And at the end of the day, there's how many playing AF these days? I don't know what the numbers are, but it's
like 130 or something like that.
Yeah, over 100,000 people. So give yourself a break.
SuperCoach,
yeah. And that's the mental side of it. But in terms of how do you get back up there? I guess the first thing is don't panic. That opening month of the year, and I had a real bad couple of weeks to start. Don't panic. Don't start going, well, I have to completely change everything. Because as it turned out, a couple of the guys that I'd started who were unique and were really hurting me early, well, look at this. They're actually hitting form now and they're doing okay. So we're probably a bit removed from the old, back in your original squad, the reason you picked them. We're really into the movement part of the season. I think whenever you're playing well in this game, MJ, you're making moves a week before the pack. And there's no greater feeling than when you do something that's a little bit early, a little bit different, and then in 7 days, oh, well, he's the number 1 trade target. It's like, well, I've already got him. And I think where I've made errors and the advice I would give is if you're in a position where you see that, there's a guy that everyone got and you didn't. So for me, it'd be Dacos this week. I didn't get him last week. So my natural instinct is to now go and get him. And I did that with Andy Brayshaw. That's fine to get those players in. That's great. But you are a week behind everyone else. So I think, there are times where it's like, you know what, that was a dopey moment. I should have got him. I'm fixing that now. But there's also times where you say, all right, well, everyone else got him. I'm going to find the next guy. And this week, as an example, I went Andy Brayshaw because I just thought I should have done it the week before, so I did it. What I should have been doing, or what I wish I'd done, is what everyone's looking at now, which is Nick Martin. And there are some very clever people out there who got Nick Martin a week before the pack. So the advice, if you're struggling, is don't go crazy and start bringing in the most unique players just for the sake of it. If you're bringing in a unique player, you need to think, is there a world where in 7 days everyone's bringing this guy in? So it might be a guy who he's probably not as cheap as he will be next week, but you're getting him now because of this week's matchup, that sort of thing. Yeah, that's the advice I'd probably give. And what I'm trying to keep in my head when you start panicking, thinking, oh, my team sucks, and oh God, every mistake, I keep making this mistake. Just stick with it, back your gut, and just don't do last week's best move this week. Do this week's best move and work out what that is.
Yeah, I love that advice. That was one of the 3 bits I wanted to share. It's be where you want to be in a week's time this week. And so, like, let me give you a player, for example, that could be that. Not saying it should be the guy you go, but let me give you a player that could be that. Connor Nash, at time of recording, has been offered a suspension heading to the tribunal. It's not confirmed, but I think we all know he's missing multiple weeks. Anything under 3 would be unbelievably shocking. 3 is probably pretty... The baseline agreed. 4 could be as many as it is. We'll wait and see. What does that mean for Hawthorn, who, by the way, have West Coast this week, which is one of the best matchups for inside mids. Then they come up against Richmond, which is a great matchup, especially for transition type scoring mids, coming up against Melbourne, which is a good matchup for mids. Who could be that guy that everybody is looking at in a week's time? Could I suggest to you maybe it's a Dylan Moore? Could he be the guy that pops into that midfield when they're getting smashed by Port Adelaide? They moved him in there. Could it be with such a really nice 3 weeks of games? And yes, he could be at a cheaper price for you in a week's time for sure. But I'm just trying to give you an illustration of who's the guy that everybody is looking at in a week's time that you could jump on now. That doesn't mean you shouldn't get him in a week's time. You still get your Petrarca. Fine. I'm just saying the fixture's pretty nice. He's shown he can score pretty nice, even when he's not in a centre bounce midfield role. But could he slide in there with no Day, with no Nash? And it just could be a move. So to me, that's one of my 3 bits of advice is be that week ahead and double down on what you shared. And the second bit was be aggressive with your moves. Even if you're doing poor or you're doing well, to stay ahead or to catch up, you've got to be prepared to fail. You've got to be prepared for it not to work for you because you're not going to win SuperCoach or Fantasy by just playing it conservatively over the entirety of the year. There've got to be critical junctions in the year that you've got to identify. This is my week to attack. This is my week to do something. Or if you're playing catch up, I can't just follow the cadence now of everybody else. I can't just get Nick Martin this week when everyone that made ground gets him last week. I can't get Petrarca next week after everyone gets him this week, or Dacos or Brayshaw or whichever person that you've got to be like, you know what? I'm okay if this just fires in my face and I suffer, but I was trying to win a car. I was trying to win my league. I was trying to win $50,000. I was trying to catch up. I was trying to stay ahead. That's okay to me. You've got to know those moments in time, sense them. And when you think it's there, absolutely make those moves. And then the last thing I'd tell you is there are great tools that are out there, such as DFS Australia, that make it really easy and pretty darn cheap for you to now start using data to inform your decisions. We are now past the junction where we're just using 1 game sample sizes or 2024 data to make decisions. We've got now enough of a cume of a year where we're starting to see trends emerge. Inside mids against West Coast. We're starting to see defenders against... We're starting to see some trends that are either validating our one game that we noticed or our sample size of last year. And so use those things that are available to you to help give you that advantage and that edge that maybe not, had you not spent that coffee money on supporting DFS, you might like, oh, I never would have looked at that player. I never would have thought of that player. So those would be the bits of advice, but I love that bit you shared about trying to get ahead of everybody. I think that's really, really good. Hey, mate, always a pleasure talking fantasy footy with you. I know we can catch up with you every single week with the Finders Keepers podcast. It is not only is it a spin-off of the Coaches Panel, but it's a great accompaniment if you're a keeper or a Dynasty League owner. I'll just let people know. I believe it was round 1. If not after opening round, you put us all on to Ned Long. So well before the rest of us hat bros decided to jump on board. So you're dropping some nuggets of gold for some people through there to try to help them out with their keeper and dynasty teams. Where can we keep in touch with you across social, and how can we listen to the pod?
Yeah, thanks, mate. So I'm on X at Jordox 2020, and come and find the Finders Keepers page on X at FindKeepAFL, just to keep up to date with the podcast. And it's been good fun, MJ. I'm really enjoying it, and hopefully helping people along the way with their keeper leagues, because that's my passion, the keeper league format. And it could cost me in the classic formats, but that's okay, because I'm you just got to play for fun at the end of the day. But thanks for having me on. It's been great to talk. Yeah, the real deeper strategy of the classic game, and no one does it better than Coaches Panel. So great to be on with you, mate.
If you want to go and check out that podcast, we've got all the details, like I said, in the description of the episode. Just search Find Keep AFL on X, or just search Finders Keepers AFL across wherever you get your audio podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You'll be able to find it there as well. You can keep in touch with us across social media, get your hands on some Coaches Panel merch. You're a 5% better fantasy coach with it. I'm just saying. There's a correlation that's there. You can make sure you get that is in the store, and it's in the link of this description of this episode. And of course, our Patreons get a bonus 2 extra podcasts a week. Every tier gets the Q&A podcast episode that lands on a Friday morning. Doesn't matter what tier you're in, you get access to that as well. If you're a premium tier supporter, you get a round review episode. So if you want to support the Coaches Panel and get some extra content from us, you can go and check that out. Of course, if you're watching this on YouTube, the good news is that there are 2 bonus episodes that pop up there. We've got our AFL Fantasy Strategy trade targets out, and the SuperCoach ones are dropping. Those on a Wednesday, normally Monday night, the trade targets for AFL Fantasy, the Wednesday night for SuperCoach, but we have to condense the week. So they're all in there. It'll happen. And then also, by the way, just a little sneak, keep a little bit of a lookout Wednesday afternoon on the Coaches Panel YouTube page. We may or may not be dropping the brand new keeper positions that are coming into the format. Don't forget about those. We've ended round 6 at the end of round 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18. They are all there. So just hover around our YouTube channel like bad smells, and you will find out those position changes ahead of everybody else. Hey, friend, thanks so much for tuning in, whether you're watching, whether you're listening. We're so grateful you give up your time and invest in yourself and your fantasy football team, regardless of the format. We hope for you this week, the trades you make absolutely sing, that rookie roulette is all coming up Millhouse, and your captain nails it for another week. Hey, good luck, and we can't wait to be chatting with you again very, very soon here from the Coaches Panel.